UFC Fight Night, Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez is coming up this weekend, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my full predictions and breakdown for every single fight on the card and all the best moments on the card. Kicking it off with the first fight of Josh Fremd versus Ange Petroski. So between these guys, between Fremd and Petroski, they're both pretty inconsistent at the moment. In their last 5 fights, Fremd has gone 2-5, winning 2, and then Petroski's gone 3-5, but he's on a 2-fight loss streak. And I will say that when we look at Fremd and his career in terms of the fights that he's had, he just hasn't looked overly impressive, even in his wins, because he beat like Jamie Pickett, who's on like a 5-fight loss streak, and then he beat Cedric Dumas, who especially at that point was just completely inexperienced, so he doesn't have a lot of quality to his wins. But I will say that he did actually have a pretty decent first round against Roman Kopylov when they fought in his last fight. He showed durability there as well, and when in that first round he was doing a very good job with the outside leg kicks, and especially with his jab as well. Very quick, snappy jab, and that's definitely his best weapon because of how lengthy he is. A very long middleweight. And when we look at Petroski on the other side, like, he's made a pretty quick turnaround in this fight, considering he just got KO'd by Jacob Malkoun in his last fight at the end of March, basically into April. So it's only been like 2 to 3 months since he just got chinned. So I will say that's a bit sketchy for Petroski, and he has faced the better competition on a macro scale overall compared to Fremd. I mean, he's faced GM3 and he's faced Jacob Malkoun as well, and there's some others there too, but his striking is just so primitive. He pretty much just tries to swing big. He doesn't really set any of his shots up. He doesn't use a jab to set up. He doesn't really use anything except for really large swinging heavy shots to try and get a KO. With that, he just hasn't really been looking great in his last few performances, and worst of all is that he's looking very chinny. I mean, in the last couple of fights, he's been KO'd completely. He fought Michel Pereira as well, got destroyed by him. So it's a bit tricky for him, I think, in terms of that, especially when it comes to this fight, the durability difference there. Because when you look at Josh Fremd, like, he fought Kopylov, who is a KO machine, and he was piling shots on Fremd in that fight, especially throughout the second round. And Kopylov had to cripple him with a body shot because he could not get him out of there with a clean KO. And that's Kopylov has a lot of power. So it's kudos to Fremd in that instance. So I do think comparatively, I'm liking Fremd in this matchup, especially based on that durability. He's got the length there. He's got the 3-inch reach advantage, tidier striking as well. And when it comes to Petroski, you know, he's 4-1 with submissions. That's probably the best part of his game, but I don't think Josh Fremd is going to be afraid to actually go to the ground with him and fight there. But I feel like it's pretty even on the ground, but when it comes to the feet, I'm more so edging it to Josh Fremd if he's on point, if he's technical with his striking, utilizing the reach advantage, which I think he'll do, and especially if he can use those outside leg kicks as well. Aside from the jab, the outside leg kicks that he has are pretty effective. He used them a lot against Roman Kopylov, and that can then cut down the explosive entries of Petroski if he starts really digging into them early. I kind of just see this as a very similar fight to the GM3 fight. So Ange Petroski versus Gerald Meerschaert, except take out Gerald Meerschaert and you're just putting in someone that is quicker and bigger instead. So that's where I think I'm going to be taking Josh Fremd by a 29-28 decision in this one. I think Petroski could probably win the first round on damage. I mean, he does have that forward pressure threat, but I think if Josh Fremd is allowed to get comfortable, I see him running away with it in the second and third round. Moving on to the next fight, Montel Jackson versus Damon Blackshear. This fight I'm very keen for, and it's a very good tell for this fight card to show that if this fight is second on the card, then it has a very strong spine, which when we go through the fights, it actually is a very decent fight card for what we've got, especially after UFC 303, because most fight cards, like fight nights that are made after a pay-per-view event, aren't that great. They're just kind of filler spots. most of the time. But yeah, this card is actually very good. I mean, we look at this card, we look at this fight to kick it off, a huge clash of styles between these guys, so it just makes the fight night interesting from the start. So we've got Montel, who is a very good striker, clean striker. He's got a very long frame, 75.5-inch reach for bantamweight is very rare. And that's even rare for featherweight. So having that at bantamweight is extremely good advantage to have, especially for a guy that is as technical as Montel Jackson. And he's got the KO power there too, especially with the counter striking. But when we look at Damon, he's not small himself. You know, he's got a 3.5-inch reach disadvantage, but he's got the same height and he's got the same leg reach as well. And that's good for Damon, especially when it comes to his kicks. He has a very good kicking game. It's the best part of his striking for sure. But the main part of Damon's game, without a doubt, elephant in the room, is his submission threat. He is 9-0 with submissions, and yeah, he's just very dynamic, very versatile on the ground. To add even more question to this fight, both of these guys have never been finished, and it's a pretty high stake fight. This fight can make or break a top 15 shot for either of these guys. It's a dangerous one for both of them, and it's very hard to predict. I will not lie, pretty much like almost every single fight on this card. So this was a fantastic video to try and make. But when we look, like, going into Montel more directly, I mean, he's very accurate. Very accurate, especially with his takedowns. Statistically, definitely one of the best in the bantamweight division for successfully getting those takedowns. But he's not going to be wanting to take this fight to the ground. I will be very surprised if he tries to do so. I think that's just giving Damon Blackshear such a good chance to take him out, because Damon is just so technical on the ground. I mean, he hits rear naked chokes, triangle chokes, and of course twisters, unlucky Jose Johnson. But if they do get an exchange on the feet, I would be edging it to Montel, because that counter striking capability of Montel Jackson is definitely there. He's kind of got that like Conor McGregor-esque like left, like that check left hook in his arsenal. I mean, he took out Rana Yaya with it. But that being said though, Damon Blackshear is coming off an extremely competitive fight with Mario Bautista on a week's notice, having back-to-back fights, back-to-back weight cuts, and he looked good against a Bautista who is one of the most underrated fighters in that bantamweight division easily, which I talk more about in my video of the most underrated fighters in every division right now, which if you haven't seen that already, I'll leave that in the description below. And if you give Blackshear that fight back with Mario Bautista without having the back-to-back weight cuts, has a full training camp, he could possibly be on the edge of the top 15 right now, or even in the top 15 right now. And when we look at Montel in comparison in terms of that experience, he hasn't fought anyone of Damon Blackshear's level of opposition. I mean, Damon's fought Bautista, he's fought a Farid Bashara as well, who's undefeated, very big hype train at the moment. And I will just say that even though Damon Blackshear lost those fights against Bashara and Bautista, it's just made him more competitive. It shows that he is up there. And I think, honestly, yeah, with the full camp in this fight, and him being able to mix up his game with his kicks, especially to the legs and the body, that's very, very good with that, especially against Mario Bautista when they fought, especially in that first round. He's causing him a lot of issues. I honestly do think Damon Blackshear will be able to edge out a decision in this one. Honestly, it could be a split decision. It's a very, very hard fight to predict, but I feel like Damon Blackshear's just had a better pedigree of opponent. Montel Jackson's also a slow starter as well, so if Damon can get those kicks off early, really shut down Montel's movement, his speed, and then if he can take him down off that, especially after, you know, battering his legs and his gas tank to stop Montel, to cut down Montel's takedown defense, then yeah, I'm pretty more so comfortable really going with Damon Blackshear in this fight. I know he's the underdog. I honestly think this should be a pick'em fight, without a doubt. Montel Jackson, obviously, I feel like he's more of that betting favorite because he does have the momentum there. I think he's on like a 5-6 fight win streak or something like that, possibly even more. Don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, I wouldn't put this anywhere near my multi. You know, don't put it anywhere near your multi, honestly. It's just too much of a razor close fight, which I think it will be a fantastic fight from all avenues of MMA, but yeah, I honestly, I do see Montel. I think he loses this fight and loses momentum with this one. I think Damon takes it by a 29-28 through the first and second round, but then I think Montel will be able to pick it up a bit more with just that overall volume in that third round, but I think it'll just be too little too late. Now moving up the card, Luana Santos versus Mariya Agapova. Now this is probably like the one fight that I'm not really keen for on this card, to be honest. I'm just going to come out and say it. Like pretty much every other fight's good. This one's a bit whatever. I mean, I'm going to be taking Luana Santos in this one by decision. She's 2-0 in the UFC now. I'll say she doesn't have the nicest striking, like the cleanest striking. Aside from her clinch work, she's pretty strong in there, and she transitions with her like judo throws and trips pretty well. And I would say that she does have the power advantage here. I mean, she took out Juliana Miller, who's a tough winner. I mean, I don't know how credible that is these days, to be honest, but I mean, still took her out against the cage, stuffed her takedowns when Juliana was getting desperate, stuffed the takedowns and reversed them, and got top control pretty much straight away, which is a lot of help from that grappling and judo base that she does have. But we need to see if she's actually going to make weight. I mean, she weighed 4 pounds over against Egger in her last fight at bantamweight, and this is at flyweight, so she needed to have a really good bloody camp to hopefully actually make sure she made weight. But even if she doesn't make weight, I'm going to be going with her anyway. I mean, there's a lot of swaying pros and cons to making weight or not. Obviously, it sucks for the person that makes the weight because they're more dehydrated. They have to put more weight back on. But then it also can be a tell for someone that doesn't cut weight properly that they could have just had it. They just could have not had a very good camp in general. So it's very up in the air with that. That's why we can't really judge it on that. So I basically just hypothetically say that these guys are making weight. Well, pretty much any prediction I do, they are making weight. And when we look at Luana Santos, I mean, she's training under Uriah Faber and she's trained with Macy Barber a lot. So, and they've come out, and obviously it's biased from them, but they've said that she's improved a lot since her debut fight in the UFC. I mean, when we looked at that fight against Miller, her striking has improved more. I mean, going from the Miller to the Egger fight, her striking improved a lot more in the Egger fight. She was timing her strikes a lot better, and with that power, she can definitely do some damage. And then when we look at Agapova, she's coming off a 2-year layoff and a 2-fight submission loss streak. Now, I've gone Santos by decision here because I do think with Agapova and her experience that she does have, she's fought like decent competition in her career in comparison to Luana Santos and the skill set that she has. So I do think that she'll be able to be crafty enough to not get finished by Luana Santos. But I do see Luana Santos honestly taking this by like a 30-27 decision. I mean, Agapova, she does like land at the better clip. She's got better striking accuracy. I mean, she's fought like Jillian Robertson, Marina Moroz, and Tracy Cortez. I believe she fought Cortez in the Contender Series. So she's got that experience there, and I think that's where that craftiness is probably going to come in terms of fighting lesser competition like Luana Santos. But I still just, with that 2-year layoff and Luana Santos ultimately being more well-rounded, I just think that she's going to be able to take this one, honestly. I think just with her, like her activity, especially her power, her trips, her submissions as well, that submission threat there at least, I think she can definitely take this. But I think I'm gonna have Luana Santos taking this mainly off her control with that judo base. So give her the 30-27 decision here. Now moving on to the more interesting flyweight women's fight by far, Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Fatima Kline. So this is going to be a very fascinating fight for that flyweight division for sure. I mean, at least, you know, Jasudavicius is actually ranked. So this does have implications for that division. And I mean, Jasudavicius, she's had the full camp. She was supposed to fight Araujo, and then she just pulled out for some reason. I'm not too sure why. And that would have been great for her because she would have, like, Jasudavicius would have been able to push up the rankings if she beat Araujo, which I think she would have, to be honest. But now she's got a bit of a regional hype train on her hands now. I mean, she's got to deal with this instead. Fatima Kline is, I've seen a few of her fights, most of her fights on the regional scene, and she's got hype around her for a reason, I'll say that. I mean, she trains with Erin Blanchfield, which is definitely going to be creditable for her in terms of her ground game. I mean, aside from that, in terms of her actual skill set, she's looked pretty decent on the regional scene so far. She's very aggressive
and she times her level changes very well when it comes to the wrestling, which I don't think against Jasudavicius is going to be that great of a game plan to go through. But she does have pretty accurate striking, which is where that can really play into her game in this matchup against Jasudavicius. And also as well with Kline, she does have pretty decent takedown defense, but granted, this is all against fighters that are not as good as Jasudavicius. And that being said, Jasudavicius, she's got the experience there. She's bigger than Fatima Kline as well, and she's coming off one of the most dominant wins in flyweight, honestly, possibly in women's MMA in recent years. She bullied the absolute shit out of Priscilla Cachoeira in that last fight that she had. She destroyed her with ground and pound. It was a very, very impressive performance there. I honestly just think, even coming off that, and just like Jasudavicius is decent. She is definitely decent, especially with the wrestling and just the pressure that she puts on and the durability that she has. I genuinely, I think Fatima Kline is good, but I don't think this is the debut fight for her. I don't think this is the right decision to make, to fight Jasudavicius on her first fight. Kudos to her for taking it and obviously possibly being able to jump straight into the rankings, but I just don't think this is it. Because Jasudavicius, she's very strong in the clinch, she has very good top control as well, and she's very durable. So with that striking, it's going to be interesting to see how much Kline can actually pressure for 3 rounds and see if she can actually get Jasudavicius out of there. Yeah, Jasudavicius has got a chin. I don't see that happening. And if Fatima Kline starts to wane in terms of her stamina and Jasudavicius starts picking up and she gets that ground control, I think it's going to be long for Fatima Kline unless she's got that Erin Blanchfield submission game in her locker, which we haven't seen. She's 1-0 with submissions, but we never know. That's what's hard about these regional scene fighters, that's for sure. We don't really get to see too much. But from basing off what we have here, yeah, Jasudavicius, just on the experience as well. I mean, she's only lost to ranked competition. I mean, she lost to Tracy Cortez, who's literally main eventing this fight night, and Natalia Silva, who's 100% going to be a consistent top 5, I think, in the flyweight division without a doubt. So yeah, I think, like, aside from Fatima having like the clean shots and the strength, especially through the transitions as well, that I've seen in the regional scene, I honestly just think with the pace and the strength in the clinch, I think Jasudavicius is going to take this one by a 29-28 unanimous decision, and I think she's going to carry through the last 2 rounds. I definitely could see Fatima Kline, especially with the speed, giving Jasudavicius a few issues in the first round, but I think that experience, that ground control, just the clinch game and the pressure of Jasudavicius, I think that's going to carry through the last 2 rounds. So I think that's going to pull her through that 29-28 decision. And I look, don't get me wrong, I do think that Fatima Kline will do well in the UFC. I think she will definitely be up there. She's 24 years old at the moment, and she's got a pretty decent, well-rounded game at the moment, but going straight up against Jasudavicius, who's in the top 15 and that's on a full training camp as well, and that's on good form, I just don't think it is the best decision for Fatima Kline to make. But if she somehow wins, absolute kudos for that. But yeah, I've got Jasudavicius in this one. And moving on to our feature prelim, Josh Van versus Charles Johnson. Absolutely great feature prelim fight. This is just bolstering the fact that this fight night is actually very decent. I mean, this will definitely be a very fast-paced fight, very high striking output as well. And it's good to see that Josh Van is actually coming back after getting shafted with that Tagir Ulanbekov fight, with Tagir having to pull out in that, I believe it was the Perez versus Tyra fight night. Definitely frustrating for him, but he is 22 years old, so he's got the time, but it was a huge opportunity for him, which sucks. And just to add insult to injury, I just don't think that this is a straightforward fight for Joshua Van by any means. This fight is going to be very competitive. I don't think that this should be like that $1.50 to $2.50 fight. I think this should be a pick'em, to be honest, because whoever's striking accuracy is on point in this fight and the speed is going to take the fight. I think it's just simple as that. Charles Johnson's fast. He's fast. He's got the speed, and he's actually got pretty decent accuracy as well. Probably not as good as Josh Van, but Charles Johnson's got the experience there, honestly, and similar to the Montel and Damon Blackshear fight, like this does have implications for that top 15. I think that whoever wins this, and if one of them can win decisively, which I don't think that'll happen, I think if one of them can win decisively though, top 15 crack 100%, especially if Van was just going to get Ulanbekov without a doubt, and that goes the same for Charles Johnson as well. So a very, very important fight for both of these guys. It's going to be, I think it's just going to be an extremely entertaining fight. They've both got very high outputs. Both of them land at like a 60% clip, possibly even a little bit higher. I believe it might be, I think it might be about 58 for like Charles Johnson, like 61 for Josh Van. So ultimately, regardless, for both of them, it's a very high output, landing at a very good clip. And with that strike speed as well, it's just going to be, yeah, there's going to be a lot of volume. I'll be extremely surprised if there isn't. Looking at Charles Johnson and why I think that this is going to be an extremely close fight, especially from his end to make it so, is that he's got his form back. I mean, he beat Maxim, and then he's just beaten Jake Hadley as well, and he beat Jake Hadley very well, and I think that's just really flipped that momentum there for him. I mean, he's got a good track record against like striking oriented fighters, not so much like grapplers. I mean, he's faced so many grapplers at this point. I mean, as wild as it may seem, I think it is going to play into his favor, just because Joshua Van, we just haven't seen any real grappling offense for him that's consistent. And I think that Charles Johnson is going to have, he's going to have a lot of confidence coming into this fight if seeing that statistically and just from Joshua Van's game is that he's not a submission oriented fighter. So he doesn't really have that to worry about. I mean, he's not a wrestling oriented fighter, like a control oriented fighter as well. He's just a very technical striker. So if Charles Johnson can really mix up that submission grappling game there, it could be a lot of trouble for Joshua Van. And with that, I'm going to be taking Johnson by the 29-28 unanimous decision here. He's got the technical ability I think he honestly has the technical ability to hang with Van on the feet here. And he's fought much better opposition than Van as well. And not to mention, he has a 5-inch reach advantage, and he has never been finished either. So all those points to add up why I'm picking the underdog here realistically. I mean, he's got good takedown defense as well. He stuffed all of Jake Hadley's takedowns. If Hadley's not having success, I'm going to be extremely doubtful that Joshua Van's going to have success with the takedown. Even on top of that as well, Charles Johnson's got pretty much no stamina issues either. I mean, he got ragdolled by Rafael Estevam for 10 minutes in their fight, and then came back and was very strong in the third round after just getting wrestle fucked the whole entire time. So yeah, there's a lot of points to Charles Johnson here and why it should be a pick'em. Honestly, I'm very surprised that it's not. There's just a lot of hype on Joshua Van, which is understandable. I mean, I do understand why he is a hype train in the division. He's very technical, and he's very good striking, very, very good jab as well. So I do see why, but I think people are definitely underestimating Charles Johnson here, especially just with that just the experience overall. I mean, his speed and his accuracy as well, and that longer reach. So yeah, I do think that Van has the technical advantages overall, but I just think with all those characteristics there, I think I see Charles Johnson getting this done. And Josh Van, he has been wobbled before as well. We have seen that in the Borjas fight as well. I mean, he came back strong, but if you put Johnson there instead of Borjas, with that accuracy, that speed, and the KO threat that he does have, he's 6-0 with KOs, might not be looking good for Joshua Van, to be honest. So yeah, I do think that I've gone the decision here because I do think that Joshua Van is technically, I think he's just defensively sound enough to make sure it goes through to a decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Charles Johnson can actually find a finish if he gets on a decent roll and finds his rhythm and reads very, very well. All in all, with that, I'm going to take Charles Johnson by a decision here. And moving on to the main card, Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Cody Brundage, the man, the myth, the legend. Not really, because I honestly just think that I think this fight is a time bomb just waiting to go off. I hope that Alhassan has just looked at this matchup and he's just gone, okay, I need to drill the shit out of my takedown defense here, and then I should be sweet. Because Brundage is just, I will be very surprised if he threatens Alhassan on the feet. Alhassan, he's just fought much more dangerous opposition, and he's had his chin tested before. And I mean, if he's fighting fighters like Joe Pyfer and like Joaquin Buckley and Ribeiro as well, if they're not taking him out, Cody Brundage is not taking him out. Definitely not on the feet, but if Cody Brundage can get it to the ground, then, which he needs to do, he needs to shoot straight away. He needs to get this to the ground as quickly as possible and hunt for that submission like there's no tomorrow. Because if he doesn't, and Alhassan stays on the feet, he is going to chin Cody Brundage. And I honestly think he's going to chin him in the first round regardless anyway. I think he's just going to pressure forward, and he's got the wide base as well, which is, he's got a natural wide base, which makes it a little bit harder to really secure those takedowns. And Cody Brundage just doesn't have great fight IQ anyway. So I think once he starts getting a bit suffocated on the feet, which I think Alhassan's going to do straight away, and if Cody just doesn't succeed on that takedown, I think Alhassan is just going to absolutely chin him. And Brundage is already chinny anyway. So, I mean, going up against a guy that's 12-1 with KOs, has a lot of power behind him, has a wide base, generates a lot of it. Nah. I think he'll stuff the takedowns, forward pressure, and then I think he'll just absolutely chin him against the cage when he cuts him off. So yeah, I've got Alhassan on in the first round, KO in this one, without a doubt. Now moving on to featherweight, Julian Erosa versus Christian Rodriguez. Now, compared to the last fight, which I made a pretty direct prediction for Alhassan, but honestly, the more we go through this card, the more of an absolute betting nightmare this bloody thing is. Just in predictions in general, with the clash of styles and the way that these guys just match up so similarly as well. I mean, you look at this fight, this is a prime example. We've got two very grappling oriented fighters, which I think in terms of actual threat, I just think they're going to cancel each other out. I think Erosa's more aggressive when it comes to those submissions, and Christian Rodriguez is definitely the more defensively sound fighter. And I just don't see it. I just don't see a finish from either of them on the ground, really, unless one of them gets hurt very badly, then possibly. But Erosa's been he's been around since like the dinosaurs, and he is 13-0 with submissions, and he's very chinny, but I just don't see him getting subbed. And against like Christian Rodriguez is good, but he's 26, he's still young, he's dismantled so many hype trains, but just don't really see it happening. And I mean, like Erosa, I think it's more so on Erosa's side when it comes to like a KO threat as well. I mean, Erosa, he's definitely got the KO like power in his locker. I mean, he took out Nate Landwehr with a flying knee in less than a minute a few years back. So that's definitely not easy to do, especially against a guy like Nate Landwehr. That guy is from Mars or something. He's insane. And yeah, very, very durable fighter. And the fact that Erosa was able to get him out of there is definitely impressive. But that being said, though, I mean, Erosa, he's been very inconsistent throughout pretty much his entire career. He goes like 2-1, 1-2, 3-1. Like he's just got a lot of inconsistency there. He doesn't really string any win streaks together, and that is mainly just down to his chin. He's just very chinny, and it's just never really ever held up. And like even going through Tough, when he started on Tough and he got destroyed by Artem Lobov, ever since then, I mean, no chin. Like he's got the reach here, he's got the height, but yeah, it's not great for him. But he is a veteran, I will say. He's crafty. He's not someone to take lightly, without a doubt. I do think the odds are fair here, and honestly, I would probably honestly say the biggest threat out of anything within this fight is Christian Rodriguez's wrestling, because Rodriguez has got very good transitions, and he's very defensively sound on the ground. He pretty much maintains advantageous positions, like against Raul Rosas Jr. He did a fantastic job in that one, and Cameron Simon as well. He manages a very good, like defensively, like safe positions on the ground and then drowns out the clock with it. And he keeps himself out of submission danger a lot of the time. I mean, he's never been finished. And there's been points where he could have been submitted, but he's just very, very calculated, very calm, very composed on the ground. And yeah, I mean, that comes down to, I mean, he's getting more and more credible, and he's very underrated, honestly. I mean, he's taken out Raul Rosas Jr., Cameron Simon, and Isaac Bulgarian as well, who are all fighters who had a shit ton of momentum and hype behind them as well. So he's just taken all that and he's gained the momentum himself. So ultimately, I do see this being a very, very close fight, but I'm gonna go with Christian Rodriguez by a split decision, and I just think he'll be able to land the cleaner shots, mainly through the clinch and then like just before getting to the takedown and getting through to the wrestling transitions there. So I think he'll be able to land some better shots, but I think the wrestling transitions and that control time is what's gonna edge him the fight in this one. I can see Erosa definitely landing the more powerful shots for sure, and possibly threatening with some submission. So that's why I think it's going to be so close. But I just think in terms of that wrestling, that's the real standout there. And I think Christian Rodriguez is going to take it with that wrestling there. Now moving up, Gabriel Bonfim versus Ange Loosa. This, honestly, just as I said with the last fight in terms of being a betting nightmare of a card, this just makes it even more so, because statistically with what both of these guys bring, it's just honestly a borderline stab in the dark at this point, because these guys are polar opposites when it comes to their styles. You know, you've got Gabriel Bonfim, who's a very aggressive submission artist, and you got Ange Loosa, who's just a muscle nugget with KO power. So it's definitely going to be tricky even when it comes to the ground. With Bonfim getting Ange Loosa to the ground, will Ange Loosa be able to explode out of those positions that Bonfim has him in? And then when it comes to Ange Loosa on the feet, I mean, he hasn't finished anyone in his last 4 or 5 fights. He's won pretty much all of them by decision, but I mean, he got taken out by Brian Battle. Let's be honest here. He did technically lose his last fight. But then Bonfim, I mean, he looked poor against Dolby. I mean, he had his first ever KO TKO loss against him as well. So there are a lot of questions when it comes to this fight. They've both had poor performances in their last fights. Before that, they've been on tears, and yeah, they're very polar opposite in terms of those styles. So it's going to be a big question of, can Gabriel Bonfim hang with Ange Loosa on the feet, and then can Loosa hold up his takedown defense against Bonfim to make sure it doesn't get to the ground and he doesn't get submitted. Now, when it comes to that, I'm more comfortable with Bonfim being both on the feet and obviously on the ground, compared to Ange Loosa being on the feet and on the ground. If it's both on the ground, Bonfim, I think, is going to submit Ange Loosa, to be honest. I would not be surprised. That's the most likely point of view here, I do think. And I honestly do think that, because when it comes to the feet, Ange Loosa, I feel like he's going to be pretty tentative. I don't think he's going to want to be that, you know, that classic like forward pressure, fast pace, heavy punching style against a guy like Bonfim, because if Ange Loosa overextends and Bonfim is able to take his back, it's long. It's long for Ange Loosa. So I think he's going to be pretty withdrawn when it comes to that. He's got the longer reach, Loosa does. So I mean, if he can point fight there and make sure he can hold up his takedown defense, I think that's definitely arguable for him to win this fight. But Gabriel Bonfim, honestly, I mean, he's 3-1 with KOs. It's like he's still got a striking avenue there, which is definitely better than Loosa's ground game. So I just see that Bonfim is going to take this by submission when it comes to just having that more well-rounded game overall. Like if it goes on the feet and he even hurt, especially if he hurts Ange Loosa and gets it to the ground, I think just within 15 minutes, honestly, I think within 15 minutes, Bonfim is going to have that ability to get this fight to the ground. And after getting TKO'd by Dolby, he knows he can't fight for, you know, the first or second round and just destroy everyone in the first round, especially as that competition gets more and more difficult. So I think Bonfim, hopefully, that fight against Dolby was a big wake-up call for him, and then he understands that he might have to take this to the distance, especially against someone like Ange Loosa, who's so durable. But I do think, honestly, in 15 minutes, with Bonfim adjusting style, I do think that he is going to be able to get the submission here. I think he's going to be able to drag it to the ground at one point in time, and the moment it does get to the ground, if he has over a minute of time, and Ange Loosa especially is tired and he can't explode out of those positions that Bonfim has him in, Bonfim submits him. I honestly think that, I do think that he is going to submit him, and I think it's going to be by a rear naked choke finish. I think he'll whip that out in the second round. Now moving up the card, Drew Dober versus Gene Silva. I am so bloody keen for this fight, honestly. Gene Silva has got humongous bollocks for this fight. Honestly, he is a beast. He is so, honestly, he's one of the most entertaining fighters for me at the moment. He is fantastic, along with the Fighting Nerds gym as well. Just like with those guys in there, they're just on some different sauce. Honestly, they are very exciting. This fight is just going to be nuts because both of these guys are finishing machines. They're 25-2 when it comes to KO TKOs in their career, so they're both very durable, as we know, with Drew Dober's head the size of the fucking moon. So yeah, we do know that this is going to be a very entertaining fight no matter where it goes. But honestly, when it comes to me speaking out in the past couple of videos, the Fighting Nerds gym is just the fighters out of there. Those guys like Gabriel, Gene Silva, and Maurizio Hufi, they are just on something. They have some amazing momentum between them, and most of all, they're just extremely hungry to fight. I mean, if we couldn't tell already, Gene Silva has literally just done a Damon Blackshear, and he's gone back-to-back fights. He's fought at UFC 303, destroyed Charles Jourdain, and now is coming into this fight night, moving up a weight class, and is fighting one of the biggest KO threats up a weight class. So this is a fantastic opportunity for Gene Silva. And honestly, if he can get this done after back-to-back weight cuts, and if he can knock Drew Dober out or just finish him, that is insane. That is extremely impressive, especially for not even being a natural lightweight. Yeah, honestly, this could be a one-way ticket for him to getting a lot of notice in the UFC. And like, not only just on Gene Silva, like, I love Drew Dober. He is very entertaining when he fights, but I do think that the weight translation, I think it'll work, and that power translation will work very well for Gene Silva at lightweight. I mean, he's got the same physical attributes that Dober has, but he's 7 years younger than him, and he's never been finished in his career. But the fact is, he's also very calculated with his approach, which is kudos to the Fighting Nerds gym. They're all very, very cerebral fighters, and honestly, with both of their power, it's a coin toss. I mean, both of them could get finished on the feet. Even though Gene Silva hasn't been finished, you cannot count out Drew Dober's KO power. If he hits anyone the right way, they're going to sleep without a doubt. But I'm gonna take Gene Silva by a submission here. I honestly just think their camp would have studied the shit out of Dober's submission defense track record, and especially his last fight against Renato Moicano, and how easily he was controlled, especially in that half guard, which we have seen with Gene Silva on the regional scene in terms of having that top control. He's decent with that top control, makes himself very heavy. And honestly, I think that especially if one of them cracks the other, I think if Gene Silva can crack Drew Dober, I think, and drops him, I could easily see him going for a submission here. 100% just go for a KO TKO, which he'd probably want. But I feel like if there's that ease of access there, I honestly do think that Gene Silva can find a submission in this fight if Drew Dober does get hurt. Drew Dober's 5-4 with submissions. He doesn't have the greatest submission defense, and I'm sure that is something that they have calculated in that training camp. So I am very high on Gene Silva, and I honestly think, and I do honestly hope, as much as I love Drew Dober, I hope Gene Silva gets this one done, to be honest. He's just a badass motherfucker for doing this, for really taking this fight seriously. It's pretty impressive, but I think that Dober will do a good job early. I think he'll push the pace pretty well while Gene Silva is getting his read. So as long as Gene doesn't get knocked out in the first round, I think Gene will do a pretty good job ultimately. I think that once Gene gets his reads, I think he'll be pretty good. He lands at a higher output. He's more accurate with his strikes as well than Drew Dober too. So if they're in the exchange, I would not be surprised if Gene gets the better of it, to be honest, even though he has had much less experience. Just statistically, and the way he fights and the confidence he brings, would not be surprised if he does even win in the exchanges anyway and gets a KO. But yeah, honestly, I think that he is smart enough to drag this fight to the ground with that threat that Dober does have. And I can just picture it now. His corner will be screaming at him. His corner, the Fighting Nerds corner, will be screaming at Gene Silva if he starts to get reckless. So I do think that we can see that he will really try for that submission game, and I really think that he's going to pull through with that submission win. Now moving on to the co-main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Muslim Salikhov. Look, first and foremost, I'm going to be very surprised if someone does not go to sleep in this fight. Don't think there's any way this is going to a decision, to be honest. I would be very surprised. Just a mix of their styles and their ages and just their track records in general, honestly. Like they've both fought and lost to pretty decent competition. Much more in favor of Santiago Ponzinibbio. I mean, he's fought and lost to Kevin Holland in his last fight, and then he went to split decision losses to Michel Pereira, who is annihilating everyone that he fights in middleweight, and Jeff Neal, who is just a natural, well-known KO power threat. And then when we look at Salikhov, still impressive, but not as impressive as Ponzinibbio. I mean, he's fought the Leech, he's fought Nick Dolby and Randy Brown as well. But yeah, they're just a level below what Ponzinibbio has been fighting. And even though Salikhov, he's got decent boxing, he lands at a higher clip, he's more accurate than Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio is just more athletic, he's younger. He's just got the speed, he's fought more notable competition, and he's got the longer reach here as well. So I just feel like there's just a plethora of strengths here that really play against Salikhov when it comes to Ponzinibbio's game. And I mean, they've both got a combined 29 KO wins, but then Ponzinibbio has the offensive submission threat there as well. He's 6-0 with submissions in his career, and that is definitely, well over than what Salikhov has got. I mean, he's 2-2 with submissions. So when it comes to the ground threat, Santiago Ponzinibbio has definitely got it there. And also, I think it's good that he's taken the time off after the Kevin Holland fight. I honestly just think after that, and he was pretty consistent beforehand. So I do think that it's going to be good to see him come back just fresher and young against an older opponent as well. And, coming off a fight against someone like Kevin Holland, who is a lot better than Muslim Salikhov, I think this is just a very good placement fight for Ponzinibbio, especially at this point in his career as well. Honestly, if he wins this, which I think he will, and I think he will win it by KO TKO, this could honestly be a good way for him to end his career. But I feel like Ponzinibbio is one of those guys that will probably fight till he's like 80, to be honest. But yeah, he's ultimately, back to the actual statistics of the fight, he's just very good at landing clean shots. He's very aggressive and very fast, and I think Salikhov just doesn't have the speed there to really evade what Ponzinibbio is going to offer him. I think he's going to catch him in the second round. I think he's going to drop him, and then I think he's just going to ground and pound him out. I'm pretty confident in this pick, to be honest, just with the strike speed difference there, the KO, obviously they both got KO power, but the strike speed difference, the reach advantage, the age as well. I think Salikhov's on his way out, and yeah, I think that this is going to be an absolute highlight reel finish for Santiago Ponzinibbio in this one. And moving on to our main event, Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez. Look, kudos to Tracy Cortez. I mean, especially for taking this fight on short notice. Like, I do wish it was the original Macy Barber fight. I think it would be more so competitive. But obviously, we get what we get. And if Tracy can pull this off, if she can get out of this fight unscathed, she could have that potential to fight at the Sphere against Alexa Grasso. If Valentina Shevchenko does not decide to fight Alexa Grasso at the Sphere, which is most likely probably going to happen, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. And I would be very surprised if Alexa Grasso does not fight at the Sphere. There is a possibility for Tracy Cortez there, but I think Manon Fiorot is going to be shutting that down anyway. Manon's 7-0 in the UFC, and she is the only one that realistically actually deserves the title shot at this point. She's just an absolute beast. Excuse the pun. But yeah, I will say that honestly, kudos to Tracy Cortez for taking this fight, but I think that Rose Namajunas is going to be taking this fight. To be honest, I'm fairly confident on this one, down to a number of factors here. I mean, Rose Namajunas, she's very well rounded. She's got a wealth of experience compared to Tracy Cortez in terms of higher up competition. She's a lot more well rounded than Tracy Cortez. Don't get me wrong, Tracy does have good boxing. She's got good double leg takedowns, good wrestling overall, but she's coming in on short notice. Her first 5-round fight against a former champion, yes, who was in a lower weight division, but I mean, Rose is starting to settle into the flyweight division pretty well. I mean, she did very well against Amanda Ribas in her last fight. And a big issue is with when it comes to the replacement, Tracy's just not coming in on short notice against someone that doesn't really know her style. Tracy Cortez and Maycee Barber do not have too dissimilar of fighting styles. They're both boxers. They both have the, that kind of clinch game, offensive clinch game work. And Rose Namajunas has been training for that for a whole fight camp because she's been training for Maycee Barber, and Maycee Barber is just a better version of Tracy Cortez in my opinion. So I think that Rose Namajunas is going to be extremely prepared for this fight, and honestly, I just don't really see Tracy Cortez having a lot of answers for what Rose is going to bring, especially when it comes to the grappling department as well. I think Rose is very quick on the ground. I think she will be able to out wrestle Tracy Cortez on the ground, and I think she'll be able to really draw out the points from the judges in this fight. And that being said, I do think that Rose is going to get the 48-47 decision in this one. And I'm also say that because I think Tracy Cortez, honestly, I would probably say that she has a bit more power. I think she has a power edge in this fight compared to Rose, unless Rose is, throwing kicks where she decapitates young Wei Li. But I do think that Tracy Cortez just has that boxing there where it might be a little bit of an issue for Rose, but Rose is very good at circling. She's very good at keeping out of danger. She doesn't trade. She's very calculated, but I do think that Tracy will be able to look at maybe the first 2 rounds and take them just based off output and possibly damage. But I think Rose is just going to take over in the last 3 rounds, or possibly just the second to the 5th round. So it could honestly be a 49-46 more so, I think, for Rose Namajunas. And yeah, it's just that experience. It's the experience. It's the 5-round experience. The competition that she has faced as well. I don't see that Tracy Cortez is going to have a whole lot of answers for Rose Namajunas against a girl that's had that much experience, fought the best of the best in her own division, and I mean, she's come up to flyweight. She's looking good. She looked good against Amanda Ribas, as I said. But I think that it'll be a good experience for Tracy Cortez regardless. I don't see either of these girls getting finished, but I think Rose is just too experienced and too good at this point in time for Tracy Cortez, who has not faced anywhere near the experience level of Rose Namajunas. Now moving on to the fight card awards, kicking it off with fight of the night, Josh Fan versus Charles Johnson. I think this is just going to be a very fun, high output, fast paced fight it's got the implications at the top 15 as well, so it just puts more on the line for this fight. And I do think that, obviously the Gene Silva and Drew Dober fight's my favorite fight, but I just think that fight's going to be ending by a finish, so it's going to be a bit shorter, whereas this fight's going to have consistent 3-round action. So I do see this taking fight of the night. And even though I see Johnson edging this one, Josh Fan is only 22 years old, so he's got all the time in the world to bounce back. And if Charles keeps improving, he could honestly make a statement up towards that top 15, that top half of that top 15 ranking, and he is an entertaining fighter. So yeah, hopefully for him, especially at his age, being 33, he really needs to be making that run now. And honestly, I think he can get it done, and I think he can do it. Now moving on to performance of the night. Even though he's on the older side and he has been through some wars, I think Ponzinibbio's speed, his athleticism, and especially the power are really just going to shine against someone like Salikhov, who's 40 years old. He's realistically coming to the end of his career, and I think Ponzinibbio might be able to end his career, to be honest. Now moving on to the fighter to watch, Gene Silva. I've praised this guy enough already. As I said in this video, my previous videos, him, Maurizio Hufi, and KO Baralho from that Fighting Nerds camp are problems. They're 100% problems in their respective divisions, and now Gene Silva is probably going to be a problem in 2 divisions, being featherweight and lightweight. So yeah, honestly, I can just picture Gene Silva taking Drew Dober out this weekend. And if he does, he's got top 15 options, not only in lightweight, but featherweight as well. He's going to be put on notice, especially if he pulls off the back-to-back wins. Back-to-back weight cuts is extremely impressive, and honestly, kudos to him. And honestly, I love Drew Dober, but hopefully he gets this done. And moving on to finish of the night, I'm giving it to Abdul, Razak, Alhassan. Honestly, if Alhassan's got that takedown defense on lock, I just think it's going to be a very bad night for Cody Brundage. I mean, Alhassan's, he's got the power. He's just very strong as well. He's just a very big presence there. And I think against someone with low fight IQ who's chinny against Cody Brundage, I just think it's a one-way street, and I think Brundage is just going to get absolutely chinned here. Now, obviously, this fight card is a betting nightmare, so it's clear to say that I have gone with some of the fighters that are underrated in this card, that are the underdogs, like Blackshear, like Charles Johnson, like Gene Silva as well. And when it comes to underdogs like them, if you haven't already, check out my most underrated fighters in each UFC division. I go through who is the most underrated fighter that you guys might not know about already. I would really appreciate if you check out that video, and it's just up here on the screen as well. And if you do like this content, please just chuck a like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy your day, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.